A nefarious nightmare contains themes that may be explicit or triggering for some. Specific warnings and disclaimers will be mentioned in the show notes. A nefarious nightmare assumes all parties that are mentioned in these cases to be innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Listener discretion is strongly advised. You can help us grow the show by leaving us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, or you can join our Patreon for lighthearted bonus content. With this, welcome to Season 5.
But no matter how much evil I see, I think it's important for everyone to understand that there is much more light than darkness.
Robert Utero.
You are not a victim for sharing your story. You are a survivor for setting the world on fire with your truth. And you never know who needs your light, your warmth, and raging courage.
Alex L.
For Phase 2, we wanted to not only introduce you all to Katie, but we also wanted to bring back some of the survivors from the Minding the Beehive series back in Season 2, and just to see what they've all been up to after a year. Now, each of them will tell about how their mental health has been doing. They'll also give tips and advice for other survivors, what their healing journey has been like, and any relevant updates on Adrian Vildusea. With that, I'm Courtney Fenner.
And I'm Amanda Cronin, and A Nefarious Nightmare presents Still Minding the Beehive, Surviving Sex Crimes, Part 6.
Before we jump in, we do have a few reminders for you all. First of all, don't forget that we do have the True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival in just a few weeks, starting Friday, August 25th. It lasts till the 27th, and it's going to be fun, and you really don't want to miss it. Head to truecrimepodcastfestival.com and use code BEES, that's BEES, at checkout for a discount.
Another thing, if you are just now tuning in, we strongly advise you to catch up by going back a few episodes to Phase 1 of this series. We wanted to extend an extra thank you to all of those podcasters as well as newer voice talent for lending their voices in those episodes. If you liked what you heard on those reenactments and dramatizations coming up, be sure to check the show notes and click on the links associated with their names. All right. Let's get started.
So just to recap a bit on what victim blame and shame looks like, these occur when the victim of a crime or harmful act is held responsible or criticized for what had happened to them. It's like blaming someone for getting robbed instead of focusing on catching the thief. This harmful and unhelpful practice not only perpetuates a culture of victimization, but it also undermines the credibility and well-being of the victim. It's important to understand that blaming and shaming the victim is unhelpful to a case, as it discourages survivors from coming forward, hinders the investigation process, and perpetuates harmful stereotypes. Instead, we all have a duty to provide them with the necessary support, resources, and empathy in order for healing to take place and so they can seek justice.
Victim blaming can have a profound impact on a victim's mental health. When society places the blame on the victim, it sends a message that their experiences and feelings are not valid or important. This can lead to feelings of shame, guilt, and self-blame, which can worsen existing mental health conditions or even trigger new ones. Moreover, victim blaming creates a culture of silence and discourages survivors from seeking support or justice. It is crucial that we always believe the victim. More often than not, they are telling the truth, and shift the focus from blaming the victim to holding perpetrators accountable and providing empathy and support to those who have experienced trauma.
Sexual assault investigation statistics reveal a harsh reality that cannot be ignored. Over 60% of these crimes go unreported, with many of them being serious and violent. The numbers are staggering, reflecting a widespread issue that demands urgent attention. It's disheartening to see how many cases go unreported, which leaves survivors without justice. And a lot of survivors feel that reporting is straight up pointless due to the lack of justice seen in cases to this day. A lot of it is due to the aforementioned victim blaming, where the survivor feels shamed into being silent. but also due to the fact that some, not all, but some, law enforcement officials just don't take this seriously enough and tend to let perpetrators go with a slap on the wrist. We see time and time again where people are put in prison for long periods of time. Jason Vukovic immediately comes to my mind, for example, for a significantly smaller offense than that of a sex offender, sexual predator, and serial rapists. The statistics highlight the need for better support systems, improved education, and stricter punishment for perpetrators. And it's time to break the silence. We gotta shed the light on the truth and work towards a society where sexual assault is eradicated.
With all of this fresh in your head, recall a time where you were in school, or maybe the workplace. Any familiar territory that has a person of authority, such as a boss or a teacher. We're not saying this happens, but it's just an example, so bear with us. They're giving you an assignment. The person to your left is completely fucking off and being a massive distraction. They're throwing pencils, getting handsy with other students, making efforts to undermine their peers, potentially bullying, and just basically being a complete tool. And then the person on your right is seeming to be unfazed and minding their own business. You're distracted and annoyed, and it's only an hour till your lunch break. You're already upset because you're hungry, but you're also trying to move along and make something of yourself, be it getting a promotion or a good grade. The person of authority has their back to you this entire time until the big ass tool gets way too rowdy. You finally say something like, "Would you just shut up?" Everything goes quiet. The teacher or boss stops, turns around and looks directly at you, where the asshat causing all the problems is now acting completely innocent. You get written up because you spoke up. You tell the person of authority you were merely distracted and trying to concentrate, and the person of authority says, quote, "Didn't see it, so it didn't happen." Shrugs, walks away. The person on your right whispers, "You know, if you hadn't said anything, that douche canoe might have just shut up and you wouldn't be in this mess." The entire situation is, while tame, still a prime example of what it is to be a victim. Trying to speak up, getting blamed and shamed, and not being taken seriously. Now, scale that to an offense such as sexual assault or even murder, and you'll finally see where we're coming from. You'll finally see why all these victims and survivors are so angry and have a strong sense of justice. Because all too often, things like this occur, and it just needs to stop.
If y'all haven't heard the Minding the Beehive series in season 2, and I know we keep talking about it to the death, but it is very important that you all go back and go listen. That way you'll kind of understand where we're going with all of this. But if you do recall, and if you remember her episode in particular, you'll recall that she was obviously traumatized and dissociating. Kitty was someone that we especially were concerned about because there was something of an ominous foreshadowing and foreboding to her tone and vibe. It was as though the assailant had reached in and stolen something deeply meaningful to her. That's because he did. And to this day, to the day that we're recording this, he's walking free. And that's the harsh reality of this. Adrian Vildusea is free at the time of recording this. So we had the pleasure to interview Kitty once again, a year later, just to see how she's been doing, to give her a shot at speaking once again, and also to get any relevant updates. With that, here's Kitty.
My name is Kitty, and you may or may not remember me from the first series of Minding The Beehive. I am 33. I live in Seattle, Washington. I have 2 beautiful dogs and a cat. I am a bartender, and I like to spend my time traveling. I love going to music festivals and going to concerts, and I have a really awesome car that I really like, and I just live life to the fullest, and I absolutely love it. I met a predator online, Adrian Vildusea, and I flew to Arizona where I met him, It was one of the most devastating events that I've ever experienced, and I was held hostage in a house for hours. I had all my stuff taken from me. I was manipulated and gaslit, which eventually led to him traveling to Washington with me, where I was raped in my own home, and he threatened to kill my animals. Since that episode, I was able to gather my strength to put in a report. I had talked to the Washington State Patrol, and the Washington State Patrol had sent me to Olympia Police Department, and I got met with a detective who reached out to me and set up interviews with me, and I made my report, and that was very hard. But the person who did the investigation, I won't say his name, but he is absolutely amazing, and it was very hard for me to come forward because I did not think that anything would happen, and I was very scared. But him and his team were so amazing and so awesome and caring, and they truly 100% believed me, and they seen the pain through the interviews, and they knew instantly that I was telling the truth. And he worked so hard. I mean, he dedicated 3, 4, 5 months straight of nonstop work. I mean, he had hundreds of other cases, but he solely just focused on mine for months straight. And we were able to secure warrants, and we were able to find him and arrest him and extradite him to Washington. It was a very long journey, and it took a lot out of me mentally, but in the end, it was awesome. And I could not be happier that I landed such a great detective. He's such an amazing person, and I hope one day that they will put his name out there and he can get all of the credit, because he not only helped my case, but he helped move other cases as well by his hard work. And because of that, other things are happening right now, and I'm just very thankful for him.
On June 29th, 2022, one day after our Minding the Beehive series finale dropped, we received an email from a detective. The subject line was titled Sexual Assault Investigation, and some of this is redacted, but what was said was, quote, "Dear Sir or Madam, I'm an investigator with the police department investigating a sexual assault with a named suspect. I also became aware of a concurrent investigation in another jurisdiction. Through online research, I came across your podcast detailing a series of assaults, potentially with the same named suspect. Would you be willing to chat with me briefly about what research you guys have done?" End quote. He then went on to give us his duty cell number, and upon speaking to him, he said that our podcast was instrumental in his investigation. Of course, when we first got that email, I had to let Kitty and Holly both know about it. Fast forward to this interview. I asked Kitty how she felt when she first heard that we had chatted with this investigator, and here's what she had to say.
I was excited. I was very excited that he reached out, because he was so into his job, and he was so dedicated in finding out any and all information that he could about my case, and he was very dedicated. So when he did reach out to you, that was my first sign of him being very invested into helping me. And it felt really good, because I was worried when I had first come out that I wasn't going to be believed, and I was worried that it was just going to be pushed aside. But, at the end of my interview, he came over to me and he got down, if I can remember correctly, he got down on a knee and he looked at me in my eyes and he said, "I want you to know 100% that I believe you, and thank you so much for trusting me and trusting, the police team to investigate this and move forward with it. I promise you we're going to do the best we can to make sure justice comes for you." And it just felt so good. And so from there on, it just snowballed. And I mean, he's amazing. He honestly deserves an award, and I'm not the only person who has said this. Holly has said the same thing, and all of the other girls have as well. You know, he actually reached out to Holly's detective and pushed them and urged them, you know, to go through with it. And he talked to her detective so many times, and you know, one day we got the alert that it was actually going to go through, and I was just so relieved, because he wanted all of the other girls' cases to go through so much. You know, he's just a really great guy. I did not have a lot of faith in any of it, and I met him, and it has just shown me that there are people out there who genuinely care and who genuinely want to see you succeed and get justice, and he is definitely one of those.
This case had visibly affected Kitty to the point where I myself became concerned with her well-being. I recall thinking about her constantly, as while all the victims in this case were equally as traumatized, and this isn't ever a pissing contest, but it does just go to show that people do process these kinds of things differently. Some internalize it, some fight back vocally, and others will dissociate and go into a deep spiral of depression and intrusive thoughts. And she was clearly affected, and we were all so very worried. Talking to her now, though, you see that she did a complete 180, and this is something that while she will never fully heal, she has been persistent in her own journey to recovery. I asked her how she was doing these days and about how it felt to be in the upcoming docuseries created by Chris Hansen, and here's what she had to say.
Yeah, it was very scary. That was the second time I had ever told my story, and it was very raw, and it was very emotional, and I mean, I was very scared, you know, because I had talked to you, and oh gosh, I think like a month later or 2 months later, we went and did that and traveled to another state, and I mean, it really hit me, you know, but a lot has come out of it since then, and honestly, like, the person who is doing this series is just an amazing person, and he has helped so much. He's helped in my case, and he's helped in everyone else's case, and I could not be happier. You know, I didn't want to go, and I had said multiple times that I wasn't going to go and do it, but at the very last minute, I changed my mind, and I just went for it. And, you know, that in itself will and has changed my life forever as well. You know, I mean, the world will see soon what I cannot wait. It's definitely a once in a lifetime sort of thing. And it's sad that, you know, it hurts that you have to be in this type of position, and the world will see what happened. But, you know, I think that it's going to help people and inform people. You know, you don't know what's going to happen to you, and you don't know what you're going to come across. And I never thought anything like this would happen to me. And when I went to Arizona, I never in my life would have guessed that I was going to be held hostage in a house with all my stuff taken away for hours in a bedroom, you know, trying to escape someone's house. I never saw that coming, you know. So you never know what's going to happen. And it's been very eye-opening for me. And I really hope that, you know, when people see this, that if there are other victims, that they can come forward, you know.
During this interview, I recalled a time where we had seen some accounts watching us that we didn't recognize. For example, you can see who's watching your stories on Instagram, and we were thinking that it was Adrian or his family spying on us. Obviously, when we see something like this, our first step is to make the bees aware and to draw conclusions. We, to this day, do not know if this is actually him or his family, but we do believe it to be so. Given the fact that this current series centers more around the internet and cyberstalking, along with sex crimes, we felt it to be a pertinent topic of discussion. So I'd asked Kitty to expand a bit on this because she had been cyberstalked by this same anonymous source that we had seen as well.
I feel like at one point there were fake accounts that were watching me. I can't say who it was, but there were a few accounts at some point along the way that I noticed were following me randomly and watching my stories, and they knew what they were doing because I would send them messages and they would read the messages. They would change their bios of their profiles, and they would just say random things that would only make sense to me. I mean, they were watching and they knew what they were doing, and I tried to figure it out, but I was never able to. But I'm sure it was him. It's the same person. Yeah, that person watched my stuff for a while, and then they kept antagonizing me, and I just got to the point where I just ended up blocking them because I just couldn't figure out who it was. But I'm fairly positive it had to have been him, that or someone else. As far as like my friends and my family and basically everyone, I have told very few people what has actually happened face to face. It's only been, I can count them on my fingers of how many people I've actually sat down and told the story to. And those people are very special to me, and obviously I'm comfortable enough to be able to tell those people what happened. But everyone else, I have put the podcast out there, and I have just said, just listen to it. And there are a lot of people who have not been able to. They have told me straight up, I cannot listen to that. And I understand, because it is very devastating. It's very personal. It's very raw. It's, not something you want to listen to because you're so close to that person. But it's there. And if anyone wants to go listen to that episode, they're more than welcome to listen to it. If there are people who want to ask me about it, I will openly tell them what happened. And, there was a time in my life where I could not say anything. And that's not because I wanted to hide it. It's because I literally could not, because it made me so sick. And to this day, it still does. But I can openly talk to someone and they can say, Kitty, what happened? And I can say, well, to be honest, I was held hostage, and I was raped. That sums it up. And it's really sad, but that's what happened. And I live with it, and I go through the ups and downs, and it is what it is. I can't change what happened, so I have to live through it, and I have to work through it. There is a lot of support, and it is nice. My whole family knows, and they knew what was happening when it happened. They didn't know everything, but I was talking to them while I was in Arizona, and they knew I wasn't okay. They didn't know the details. But my family is very supportive. We actually have a group chat, and I update them. And, I think one of the sweetest things is one of my uncles was eating dinner with everyone in the family when I wasn't there, and he said, we are all going to go to any court date that she wants us to go to, and if it's an in-person court date, we are there. And so it's really nice to see and hear that from them, because I did not think that they would want to, but they're very supportive. And same with my work family. I never really talked about it, and I tend to talk about it with my boss, and she tears up, but the support's there. One of the bigger bosses most recently had just found out, and he pulled me aside and he said, I know I've seen some things, and I just want to talk to you, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. And I laid it down for him, and I told him, I said, this is what it is. This is what we're doing. This is what's happened. This is how many survivors we have found. And, this is where I'm at. And he said, are you okay? And I said, I'm not, I'm not okay, but I'm working through it. And he said, if there's anything you ever need, it does not matter what's going on. Like, you just have to let us know, and we're there for you. So, everyone in my personal life in my area is super protective over me, and they show nothing but the utmost support. And it's awesome to have that, because, I do go into my head a lot where I don't think I have anyone, and I'm fighting this battle alone, and it sucks, but I know that on the outside there are people there for me. It's just my inside battle that I have to battle alone.
When Adrian Vildusea was put behind bars, Of course, we all celebrated in our own ways. Finally, these ladies, after so much hard work and dedication to being vigilant, raising awareness, and utilizing their voices fully, were finally seeing justice. That is, until the unthinkable happened. We all believed that he would have no chance for bond, but then he posted bond and is currently, as of this recording, walking the streets, attending and joining more dating sites, and awaiting trial. It is incredibly frustrating and heartbreaking, albeit a process. But to us, because we do not want to see this total, complete loser hurt any more women, yet here he is with a world of opportunity to do just that. But also to the bees, because they are the ones that had the most taken from them, had been hurt the most, abused, and continuously overlooked in the justice system and not taken seriously. Since this case made Kitty nearly the most visibly upset, I had to hear where her heart and head were at upon receiving this news.
I mean, he's always on the move. There are lots of women out there who are actively searching and looking, and they find profiles of him on dating sites all the time still. Random new dating sites. We did get him blocked on Tinder, so that was good. I don't know if he'll be able to work around that, but I mean, there's so many dating sites out there, and with all of the new ones popping up, we find his profiles all over them. So we do our best to try and stop him. There are a lot of girls who work together, and I know that we have saved quite a few women in the last several months, and I'm so thankful for that. And it's because we have this network of women, and if we didn't have this big network of women, I mean, we wouldn't be able to be doing what we're doing. But because all of these girls have worked so hard to create this big network, we're able to stop anything we can and have survivors come out that aren't even involved with us, who have their own traumas that they want to release, you know? And that's amazing. Yeah, so it was very disappointing, and that just goes to show, like, the way our justice system is with sex. It's okay. No, it's okay. It goes to show that the way our judicial system is set up is there's so many flaws, you know? I mean, when I went into the first court hearing, I was prepped, and I was told that, you know, they did not think he would get bail, but, you know, there's always that chance. But I mean, they were letting out murderers, you know, so why would they hold someone who has committed rape in, is how I viewed it, you know. And that's recently in my area. So I went in with an open mind. I knew that ultimately he was probably going to get out, but I just always prepare myself for the worst. And I just think it's a good thing to do, because there could be so many outcomes of what could happen. And if you prepare yourself for the best, you're just going to be let down. So I think the one thing that did bother me is the people who did the trial date, it was the bail hearing. The people who did it weren't actually informed that well of my case. So there were certain prosecutors handling my case, and I don't know what happened, but they ended up not handling my case, and it went to different prosecutors who were not well versed with my case. And so they asked for $50,000, and they were actually, what I believed is they were supposed to ask for more. And I believe he got $25,000 bail, and he was out within 3 days. It was very soon. And it's very disappointing, but, you know, for me personally, what sealed the deal was them getting the arrest warrants and them actually arresting him, because even though he was released, that got my trial moving and going, you know. So he was released, but at least it's gonna happen, you know. And I know, you know, going into it, I know that Adrian, his mindset is everything will be dropped, of course, but we know that that's not going to happen.
At this point, I had an idea. I asked Kitty what her thoughts on sextortion and revenge porn were, and if she had any support or advice to offer to these victims. I also asked her if she had any intention of potentially starting some kind of fundraiser or foundation, even some kind of awareness campaign outside of media such as ourselves and other content creators. For the upcoming True Crime Podcast Festival, and since we have all gone ahead and reformatted our entire podcast to honor all bees, we felt it would be a good idea to add in some wildflower seeds that when we give our freebies out at this event, we give them wildflower seeds. This way, attendees can utilize these wildflower seeds, plant them in memory of a victim or survivor, and also do their part in helping the planet because, face it, we need bees to survive and thrive, and bees need flowers.
I mean, I think if anything was to happen, it would be a group effort between me and all of the girls. And I think that would be a great thing. We could call it the Beehive Foundation. Medusa's bees, if you will. That would be beautiful. I would love to do that. And if we could all band together and get something going for that, no matter what it could be, I think that would be great. And I think it's something that we could definitely do in the future. I'm going to be honest with you. I have not heard anything about any of that because I have been offline for months now. And I have not been, I've been doing a lot of inner healing work, and I don't know anything. I'm new to the subject. You know what this reminds me of? Who is that guy who went to prison for a very long time for creating a website to shame people for sex pictures? Do you know who I'm talking about? That is awful. That's horrible. I couldn't imagine going through something like that. I wouldn't even know where to begin. That's just horrible. Especially with hearing that, a 16-year-old kills herself over this. I mean, you have to feel very alone to do something like that. And I can't imagine what was going through her mind when she did that. And it's just awful. And there needs to be support groups, and there needs to be people investigating stuff like that. What are the only thing that pops into my mind is the FBI, because, the police obviously in their areas aren't doing what they need to. And that, falls back into my case. I went to the highest system I could in my state. I didn't start with the police department. I went to the Washington State Patrol, and I asked for task force that deal with the FBI. And there were 3 different task force that I were told to contact that work with the FBI, and you have to talk to. You just can't call the FBI and talk to them. You have to be directed to them. And in order for me to be directed to the FBI, I had to talk to Washington State Patrol, and I wanted to talk to these certain people who work with Washington State Patrol and the FBI. And I finally got to those people, and they called me, and they were amazed that I actually got a hold of them for my case. And, they directed me they said, well, your case could be brought to us, but it needs to go through your local police department first. And then they gave my information to my detective. And I believe the very first thing we talked about was, I just want to know, how you got these departments to call me. And I told him, I said I wanted to go to the highest people, so my case was taken seriously, and that's where it went, So, I would be going straight to the FBI. There are task force that deal with minors who work with the FBI to save minors, and we have a task force in Washington at the Washington State Patrol, and they deal with sex crimes strictly for minors, so that's one thing that pops into my head. What I would like to gain from this episode is that there are a lot of people out there who have been victimized in all sorts of sex crimes that feel alone, and it's a very dark time for them, but there are people out there that will help. And the first step is to come forward and talk about it. And I know I can say that easily, but I will tell you that it was one of the hardest things that I have ever done in my life besides going through what I went through. And it is very devastating, and it's a very hard road, and it is a mind fuck, honestly. But the outcome for everything afterwards is amazing. And, you know, I would hate to find out that, you know, one of the girls who we could have saved didn't get saved and something awful happened, you know. I think that's why we have this big group of girls, is to save women. Not just women, anyone. It doesn't matter what you are. It's all about saving people. And I think that everyone's story is relevant because everyone has different trauma. And it's hard, but, you know, you can get through it.
Prior to this question, Kitty had made me aware of an incident. Quote, important. My ex told me in email that he was disappointed in me for what had happened to me. End quote. Now, you all have heard Katie's interview by now, as she and I touched up a lot on victim blaming and also on empathy, but I want you all to pay extra close attention to what Kitty says here, because you all may or may not know or be aware that I myself have been a victim of crime. But if you can't take it from me, please take what she has to say, because she says exactly why victim blaming and shaming is harmful. And she pretty much puts it all together as to how any of us that have been victims of crime feel when we hear people blaming us for something that happened to us that was out of our control. She also goes into how it makes her feel. And it's important to note that we have no right to judge a victim, or anyone for that matter, unless you're a pedophile, in which case, hell yeah, I'm fucking judging you. Why are you even here? Go away. But to everyone else, please listen. And as a lot of my people are saying, engage with empathy.
Victim blaming. I most recently had some conversations, and this goes back to the very beginning. You know, there are a lot of people out there who like to victim blame, and I think it's disgusting. You know, when everything first went down, I had a friend at the time, and their significant other, I remember I didn't really open up about it, but I kind of had said some things, and I remember that they looked me in my eyes and they said, well, you know, it's really hard for me to feel sorry for you because you put yourself in that situation. And it's a really disgusting way to even think as a person, because I didn't know that I was going to be going into a situation like that. I had no idea, you know. I didn't know until it was too late. And unfortunately, that's how it is for a lot of people. They don't know, you know. So for people to think like that, it's just disgusting, and it makes me really sad to know that there are people out there that have small minds like that, who can't even begin to fathom, to understand, you know, what it's like and the pain that you go through and the trauma that you deal with. It's very devastating, you know. And most recently, I had someone tell me that they had listened to the podcast, and then they, you know, they had heard what I did after said things had occurred, and they just couldn't believe that I ever did that. And it's just really sad to know that there are people out there who want to victim blame, you know, when they don't know. And it's not only that, you know, I have received also emails from people, you know, saying, how could you do that to yourself? You know, didn't you used to watch shows like this? You should have known what you were doing. I can't believe you actually did that. You know, and it's really sad to see how people are. And instead of being understanding, they just go straight to victim blaming when they don't know. They don't know what it's like. And they don't know how scary it was for me to experience that and go through that. You know, there was a time where I was fighting for my life, and that was very scary. And you don't know what it's like until you're actually there in it, you know. I was in a situation where I was being choked, and he was choking the life out of me. And, you see your life flash before your eyes. You see every memory that you ever had that you loved and you cherished. You think about the things that you love the most, the people you love the most, your animals, in the back of your mind, everything flashes through your mind, and you have a split second of, I'm never going to see those people that I love ever again, and I'm never going to see my animals again, So it's very scary and it's very traumatic, and I think people need to learn to open their eyes and understand that victim blaming is not it. It's definitely something that affects me deeply, especially to know that there are people out there who have known you for your whole life, and they want to come out of the woodworks and tell you basically that you're wrong and how could you do that. It's okay. I feel sorry for those people. Instead of coming out and blaming the victim, why can't you come out and say, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can do to help you? I'm sorry for everything you went through. Can I help you? But instead we blame the victim like it's their fault for what they went through. It's just disgusting. I used to be able to watch crime shows and all of those shows. There are certain cases that I have watched, that are in my area, like the Lindsey Baum and a kid missing from our, state. He's just one town over. He's been missing for 7 years. I look into stuff like that to see if there are any updates. But when it comes to shows like that, I cannot watch them anymore because they are very triggering for me, and they make me feel very uneasy and very uncomfortable. I sat down to watch that Jeffrey Dahmer episode with someone recently, just a few months ago, and it was the first episode, and it was when he had taken this African-American guy back to his house, and he was going to kill him. And I remember watching it, and the look of terror in his eyes when he looked at Jeffrey Dahmer was so triggering for me. That's how I looked, and that's how I felt in the moment of when I was trapped inside Adrian's house. And it was a lot for me, and it really hit me because I have felt that, and I have been through that in a different situation to where you are scared for your life. So it's just not something I can do anymore. And I like to learn information about what's going on, but as far as my healing journey, I can't really watch shows like that anymore because they just traumatize me. It's sad that that's what catches people's eyes, and it's what gets views. And my heart goes out to all of the victims because it's such a hard thing to go through and experience. And what they go through behind closed doors in their minds is just devastating.
We are really grateful to Kitty for being so willing to join us in this series and give us updates and tips. She's an amazing human being and just out there living her best life, as all survivors of this type of crime should be. We love you, Kitty.
Kitty is a bee, and arguably one of the first of many in this movement that we have going. She, like all bees, is strong, resilient, but she's vulnerable. We must protect her and all bees at all costs. For without bees, we as a human race are doomed. So, be vigilant. For when you mess with the bees,
you get the hive.
Thank you for listening to A Nefarious Nightmare. Music used in the theme was originally by Ghost Stories Incorporated, remixed by Ryan RCX Murphy. Additional background music is provided by Epidemic Sound. A Nefarious Nightmare is scripted, researched, and produced by Courtney Fenner and Amanda Cronin. I'm Lainey Hobbs, and as always, be vigilant. For when you mess with the bees, you get the hive.